Take a pit stop for all things NASCAR with the Four Tire Change podcast. Here is your host, Dawson Iserlo.
Welcome back into the Four Tire Change podcast. Dawson Iserlo here on ESPN Southwest Louisiana. Loudon, New Hampshire, last week, I should say, is Cup Series race. A lot of intrigue in the second half and the very ending portion of this thing after what was a fairly normal race early on. So let's get into it quickly here. You know, New Hampshire's been a track for a while. You know, I think sometimes the racing is pretty good there. Sometimes it's a little bit more tame. It's overall always a decent race. I don't think it's usually ever a barn burner, but, you know, solid racing there up in the Northeast. And I thought this was no different. You know, you saw different things in the early portion of this race, comers and goers to an extent. You saw some cars up front that looked like they had race-winning speed. But we knew weather was in the area. We knew that all week coming in, so we knew that was going to be a factor. And you know, that ended up being kind of what the deal was. As you're getting to the second portion, you finish stage 2, you get to that third stage, and the drivers are being told, like, look, weather's coming, and we think it's going to be it. Now, that's the interesting thing. The drivers kept being told, once the weather gets here, that's going to be it. This is probably going to be over. No lights at New Hampshire, so get what you can right now. You know, essentially be a little bit more aggressive, try and get up there. And for Tyler Reddick, it looks like this is going to kind of work out perfectly for him. Reddick was up there running near the front and leading at the time. They go ahead and they call the caution for the rain, and it looks like Tyler Reddick is going to win this thing. A lot of intrigue because you had an IndyCar race, I believe, coming up on USA Network, which was what was televising the Cup race as well. So you had some people thinking, you know, maybe they're going to drag this out just for the coverage sake, but then eventually they're going to call it anyway, right? The weather was looking increasingly worse. You started out by having, you know, just some light sprinkles, but then it got to the point where you had the lightning strikes, and of course that resets the timer, 30 minutes every time there's a lightning strike and within a certain number of miles. And this, for a very long time, looked like it was going to be Tyler Reddick's one race because you were past the halfway point. The race was official. Going to be some interesting top 5 finishers there. Todd Gilliland was going to have a great run. Justin Haley was going to have a great run. But NASCAR says, we're going to wait this out. And remember, they have the wet weather package for use at tracks that are 1 mile in length or shorter, and New Hampshire falls into that category. So they had an opportunity to run the wet weather package, which essentially meant they weren't going to run in the rain because, again, these cars don't have wipers and all that. But they could run essentially without drying the track. They wouldn't have to put the air tightens out there for a long period of time to, you know, get the moisture up because they have the wet weather tires. So after this thing passes through, NASCAR says, yeah, we're going to roll. We're going to race here with the wet weather package. Everybody get your wets on and let's get back out there. And that is what happened. And Tyler Reddick at first still dominated, kind of cruised. And we had that really intriguing first couple of restarts. Really, the first restart was the most, where everybody was babying it because you had a couple cars spin out before you even got to the green flag. And I think the feeling was, and the broadcast talked about this, are we about to have a disaster here, about to have, 8-10 cars kind of collect each other into the first corner? No. Essentially, everybody babied it into the first corner, rightfully so in some regards, and everybody made it out cleanly, and you had a few laps of solid racing there with, of course, Reddick kind of pulling away. Well, eventually you start having some cautions here and there. And, look, we didn't ever have a great stretch of green flag racing, but you had some good ones. I mean, it was 20, 30 laps. It wasn't like it was every 4 or 5 laps somebody was spinning into the wall. So all in all, I thought it was pretty good. And I really like the wet weather package. I love that NASCAR has done this, and I think it's necessary. And, will we ever get to the point where we can do it on the 1.5 miles? I don't know. There's a lot more involved, the high speeds, the banking, everything else. I get all that. But the fact that we can do this at the 1 mile tracks and below is important, and there's more of those tracks now. You add a place like Iowa into the series. You add a place like Gateway into the series. I think this is a really nice thing for NASCAR to do. And we talked so much about the shortcomings of the short track package. That's the name of one of the podcasts earlier in the season. This gives you some really authentic racing in some ways, and it allows different drivers. And I was fascinated down the stretch with the dirt background guys who were looking for different lines, who were, kind of being a little bit more strategic with the car and who were thriving. Who do you see kind of come up the field in this, second segment after the rain delay? Chase Briscoe comes up through the field. You have Christopher Bell, who, of course, is going to end up winning this race. We'll talk about him in a minute. Tyler Reddick was really good at the beginning. Again, eventually, Reddick's car kind of fell off for him. But all these guys who are competing and really finding different lanes, you got to see a bit of a different skill set from the drivers. So I enjoyed that part. So Christopher Bell eventually is gonna pull away with this race. And the thing that I didn't like that NASCAR did is they kept saying, nobody can come in and change tires. No competitive pit stops here. And at first, drivers came in, got new tires. NASCAR said, no, you got to go back in and put the old ones on. We don't want anyone changing tires. Okay, it was really wet at first. They didn't think the teams were going to, they didn't want to leave it up to the teams. I get it, I guess. I don't know. But then as this thing goes on, they keep mandating, nobody's taking tires. Everybody's staying out. If you're not going to be able to change tires at all. And some drivers are like, look, I want new tires. Like, these are worn. I want something new. And then they go, okay, well, how about this? Everybody has to come down and put new tires on, whether you want to or not. And then some drivers are like, wait a minute, I'm rolling right now. I kind of found the groove with these older tires. I just have a problem with NASCAR kind of babying them a little bit and mandating this when, this is the top level of motorsport. Like, this is the Cup Series. This is not a developmental series. These guys know what they're doing. Now, would somebody have made a mistake and pushed too hard? Maybe so, but that's kind of what NASCAR is, right? Testing the limits and going up to the boundaries of what you can and can't do with the race car. So I was disappointed that NASCAR handled it the way they did, and I'm hoping moving forward, I understand the first time they did the wet weather package, maybe the second time, and this is, the third or fourth time because we've seen it a little bit at North Wilkesboro and other places, but I'm hoping they leave it up to the drivers and teams. And, look, if a driver puts slicks on before they're ready and they spin out and crash into the wall in the first turn of the next restart, that's going to be a warning shot to everyone else. Everyone else is going to realize that. So it's not like you're going to get into this, demolition derby situation, I don't think. And again, we still had a decent number of wrecks down the stretch anyway with the wet weather tires on. So that's my big complaint. I won't go farther into it. I think that kind of covers it. But I'm hoping when we get back to it again, I think the wet weather package in general, great thing for NASCAR, great thing that they have it. But let's let the drivers and teams make some decisions here, some tough decisions. They can handle it, I promise. Christopher Bell gets the win here. He holds off some surgers late. There was a couple of cars that you felt like maybe could jump up and make a challenge for the lead, but eventually nobody runs C-Bell down. And, I talked about Christopher Bell. I've felt for a while like the next set of drivers that were maybe ready to emerge and become superstars for me consisted of Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, and William Byron. That's the three that I always think of. With, in my eye, by the way, Larson already in that category as a star in this sport. And some of those other guys like Chase that are well established, I'm not counting them, but those were the three this year that I wanted to see who kind of stepped up and had a big-time dominant season. And William Byron definitely did early on, and C-Bell was really good as well. Blaney didn't have a good start. We've covered that with Penske, but he started to come on as of late. He had another good run on Sunday, so maybe that continues for Blaney's team, but who can kind of do that? And Christopher Bell, for me, man, again, when you put him out in these types of situations where it's really driver skill oriented, that dirt background helps, he's one of the best. And that 20 team has been really, really good. He's going to get a new teammate next year. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But all in all, I was impressed with Bell, and he gets another win. And now you start to look at that playoff picture, and nobody's going to want to see Christopher Bell at Phoenix. We know that. We talked about it last year, and Blaney got the best of him. Credit to Blaney for that. But Bell is one of the best at those types of tracks, and there's going to be an important added element of who can manufacture, who can run around, and who can create their line at Phoenix if you get to the championship four. Now, you have to get there first. That's the biggest thing. But right now, Christopher Bell is in a really good spot. Let's do a little points update. Joey Logano now, I believe, 13 points clear of Bubba Wallace. He's 25 points clear of Chase Briscoe, and it's something around 45 points clear of Kyle Busch for that last spot. Feels to me like Logano's going to take that spot and kind of lengthen the gap. I just think the 22 team and Penske in general has figured it out. We've seen Blaney run up to the front. Obviously, he should have won 2 races. Cindric won the other one, his teammate. Then Blaney won again. So they've got speed right now. I think Logano's going to get good finishes the rest of the way. Now, could someone else win and take that spot away from him? Absolutely. And at that point, it'll be a mess to figure out where the cut line is. But for Kyle Busch right now, it's feeling more and more like he's got to win. Now, I'm not going to say that yet because that 18 could figure it out and start putting together some really good finishes. But right now, it looks like he's on the outside looking in. A little bit of a shout out, though, to Front Row Motorsports as Todd Gilliland and Michael McDowell are like 20th and 21st or 21st and 22nd. The only thing is McDowell had a chance here, and I didn't say it yet. He took Blaney out, which I mentioned Blaney's good run. And, of course, that ended when McDowell took him out trying to win the race. But McDowell restarted on the front row of the inside lane and just tried to send it in there because he feels like he needs a win. But I did see it brought up. He's done that now kind of 3 times. You had Talladega, you had Texas, you had here. If he gets really good finishes in all 3 of those races, he's, I believe, around 99 points below the cut line. It basically make up the deficit, right? Because you figure he lost himself, at least 25 to 30 points each time. So let's give him 25. That's 75 points. He's only 20 out, and he's right in the mix of the cut line if that wasn't the case. It's a little bit disappointing for, feeling like he had to win, but then you end up having some good finishes and you realize maybe I didn't need to be that aggressive. Doesn't work out for McDowell, and again, at this point, now he's definitely in must-win territory because he's 100 points below the cut line. Some news of the week, things worth noting here. Chase Briscoe headed to Joe Gibbs Racing. It was leaked by Christopher Bell, who I guess gets away with this by getting the win this week. That'll take a little bit of heat off of him from the Gibbs camp, right? But all jokes aside, he accidentally leaks that Chase Briscoe's taken over in the 19 car when Martin Truex Jr. retires at the end of the season. For Briscoe, I think it's a great move, and obviously, he's going up to one of the power teams in the sport, but he's shown you a lot, and he ended up getting a second-place finish, kind of a gutsy effort here, in this race at New Hampshire. He's done good things with Stewart-Haas. He was dominant in the Xfinity Series. I think Briscoe can be a really good driver for them. Now, do I worry that it's more of an Eric Jones type signing? That's my worry, although I think, in my opinion, Eric Jones didn't necessarily get a fully fair shake in the 20 car anyway. Kind of funny how this is all going full circle with Bell, Jones, Briscoe here. But can he be more like a Christopher Bell signing? Yeah, absolutely. He has that type of talent. We've talked about it. Some of the different tracks that NASCAR's going to right now, Briscoe's going to be really good at. So, like the move there, and we'll see what happens with it. The other news, Stewart-Haas is going away, but Haas is not. Gene Haas is going to open the Haas factory team. And they are going to be looking for a driver. We'll see that announcement should come fairly soon. But, cool to see Haas still in the sport at least. He's going to keep one of those charters. It is a little surprising the way the reporting originally was said about Haas kind of wanting to get out of this thing. But he said, the pressure of running a full four-car operation was getting to be too much, but he still wants to be in the sport. So Haas factory team will run next year, and we'll see what they look like. All things considered, it should be interesting. Lastly, we head to Nashville Superspeedway this weekend. Nashville, a place special to me. I've been there a couple times. Went to the Cup Series race a couple years ago. Went to the whole weekend, actually, the triple header, trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. I really, really like this speedway. It's actually in Lebanon, not in Nashville. I know people kind of get confused by that. Only about 40-minute ride. I guess it is far out of town. If you're thinking it's right off Broadway Street, it's not. But I enjoy Nashville. I enjoy the racing. I think it's a unique style of track, a 1.33 miler, so not quite a mile and a half, not quite a short track. It's somewhere in between, and I think it's given us good racing. And we've seen some, different winners over the years there and some different strategies play out. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be good, and I think it's important to be in that area. I think the crowds have been great ever since they started going back there, and I expect there to be another really good crowd this week. Now, last year, or when I went, I should say, the race was at like 5 p.m., and then last year I think they made it even later. It was a night race. Now it's back up into the afternoon. When I tell you it was one of the hottest days I have ever experienced when I went, and the race was still at 5 o'clock, but we were just dying. I don't know why I do know why. It's TV. That's why they moved it back in the afternoon. But that is going to be sweltering. Hopefully it's, somehow a cloudy day without rain, although, because I had to endure a long rain delay there. It's, it's summertime in the mountains. It's going to rain. But hopefully we get good racing. Hopefully we get a good, clean weekend. And I'm going to go with a guy who won when I was there, Chase Elliott. He's got experience winning at that racetrack. Hendrick's been in a little bit of a lull here, right? Not necessarily putting cars in victory lane as often as they were in the early portion of the season, which isn't hard to do because they were winning almost every week. But give me Chase Elliott and the 9 team to figure it out. Could be a big win for them to continue to stack playoff points. Chase Elliott, very quietly, been the most consistent driver all season, consistently in the top 20. He's got a long stretch of top 20 finishes in a row. Give me the 9 car to win at Nashville. Should be a lot of fun. Go ahead and keep liking, comment, subscribing. Keep joining the 4-Tire Change movement. We appreciate it all, and we will see you next week.